Sometimes on this Haag-Streit BQ slit lamp there may be a need to attach a stereo variator, and that will be attached to the front of the head. So what we'll be doing is taking the objective lens off of the mag changer, adding the stereo variator to the mag changer, and then reattaching the objective lens to the front of the stereo variator. But to do that, you're going to need long screws. There's 4 screws here. You're going to need longer screws. But to do that, we're going to have to take it off of the slit lamp because this screw is in the way. This adjusting screw. And we're going to take off the binoculars to take some of the weight off. So we'll just be adding the variator to the mag changer. So I'll go ahead and take this head off. And taking the mag changer off with this 5mm. Hold on to it. Okay. Now I can just work with this. I'm going to put the slit lamp aside. Going to have to take off these 4 screws. They might be tight. They should be tight, but I've already loosened these, so they're going to come off fairly easily. I think it's safe to go ahead and lay it flat while I work on it. Okay, you won't be needing these screws. Might want to save them in case you take the variator off and you'll have to reattach your objective lens with the small screws. But you'll need some long screws. And if you wanted the number of the long screws, that's the number, and that's what size they are. The short screws, that's the number, and that's the size they are. And this mounting pin is like for attachments, laser attachments and other things. You may want to take that off and replace that hole with a 10-ohm screw, but this is that mounting pin, the number, and the screw if you wanted to cover up that hole by taking out the pin. Right now I'm just going to leave it on to use it to hold. Okay, we've got the 4 screws out. Take the objective lens off, put it to the side. Now the raised edge is going in, the flat surface is going to be out. Should fit right on. Put our objective lens right back in its place. I'm just going to point this out quickly that your variator should be moving freely and quietly. If you have one that squeaks, well, it's going to have to be re-lubricated, refurbished, and just like the BQ mag changer, the lock screw is right there on the front, and you would be taking this out and re-greasing everything and then putting it back together and reinserting your lock screw. There's another video out there that shows you how to do that process. Got our lens in. Going to attach our Variator screws. Tighten those. Okay, as you can see, we've got too many attachments up here, so I'm going to remove one. I'm not familiar with which one is important, so I'm just going to take this one off. You might not even need any of them, depending on the doctor's attachments. Taking that off. And yours might have come with a screw, so it can be put in either place. Okay, now when we reattach it on our slit lamp, instead of back here, it's going to be right here. When it's time to reattach it, we're just going to go put the combination stereo variator and mag changer, slide it up to the stop. You could move this out of the way if you wanted to, and we'll screw the bottom, putting the mag changer on. We have that out, we can put our head back on, line up the two dots, turn it clockwise to lock it in, and now the variator is in place, and if you wanted to take this pin out and put another tonometer cover screw in there, you could. You can switch areas. I'm not really sure. Sometimes your stereo variator needs to be taken apart and cleaned because it might be stiff, or it could squeak like a duck squeaking. So to do that, it's going to be very similar to refurbishing a BQ mag changer. So if you know how to do that, this should be fairly similar. You'll have to take off your knob, both knobs, and you have to release your chamber, your mag chamber, with this little lock screw right here on the flat surface. This is the outside, and this is the inside. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. I'm using a 1.5 screwdriver. It's pretty small. And you probably only have to loosen it to where it's even. That should free it up. And to take your covers off, you either need the special Haag-Streit tool or something that's got some points on it to release the screws. And be sure to mark which handle goes on which side. This is the user's side. It's got the raised edge on it, and the view is, this is the reduced angle view with the red dots. So if you ever get confused on where it goes, this is the normal view, and then this is the reduced angle view. So we'll take these handles off. Since I have the tool, I'm going to go ahead and use it. It's a nice little tool. It keeps things from scratching up the surface of this lock nut. Remember, there's a waffle washer in here that keeps tension on it. You can see I've already put an R on here. I labeled this one with an L. Now, similar to the BQ, you're going to have this large cover washer that's got to come off. These are the two nuts, the screw heads, that coincide with your handle. Take that off, and just like the BQ, you're going to have a spring holding this bearing that engages the detents. So you'll need to take that off and be careful not to lose it. Just grab the spring in a corner somewhere and lift it off of the post. Save it. Okay, this is already coming out because I've already loosened the lock screw. I've already taken this apart, that's why it's coming off so easily. But yours is probably going to be very stiff still, and so it's going to be stiff in here. So if you've got this lock screw loosened, then you can just push down on this side and it will eventually push up this mag barrel changer, and this large washer will probably be stiff because that's one of the places that it gets stuck. The grease that's on this surface and on the inside gets old because if it's not turned very often, or it's old, it just gets really stiff, and so it limits turning. So that may be a little hard to get off if it's if it's really stuck on there. So you'll have to try to work it off by squeezing it, cleaning it, putting some fuel on it to maybe loosen it up and work it. And then you may have to kind of work it off with a screwdriver all the way around until you can eventually get it back off. Then you'll need to clean both sides of that and clean this surface. And then also clean this surface all the way around and your little detents. The difference between this and the BQ is it's got a little stop here. So you only have two changes, two views. So you're just going to be going back. You're not going to be rotating. So there's a stop screw in here. And that will limit it to only a certain amount of turning. So clean all these surfaces, this surface, and try not to touch your lenses, your prisms. Be careful not to touch them. If you touch them, you'll have to clean them either now or later. And then, just like the BQ, you need to clean this surface and this surface, and this should be okay, but you might want to clean this. There's not going to be any lubrication in this because that's the outside of this washer, so it's going to be locked in place, so it doesn't move. It's the inside of this that turns. So this isn't that crucial, but this side does, because that's where your detents will be traveling on the inside. So clean all those up well, and then going to re-grease it with a very thin grease. Haag-Streit recommends number 2 or number 17. And just put a light coat on the inside of this big washer, and maybe, yeah, just the inside there. You could put just rub a little bit on the surface, and then you put a light coat around here, here, and just a very, very thin, if any, right in the corner where this disc is going to be turning. But you don't want to get a lot of grease on here, because once you push this in, it's going to push any extra grease onto here, and then it's going to be between here, and then that's going to slog it down, and that's what can eventually stiffen it up again. So you want to have just minimal grease on the inside of here, and you don't have to worry, it's going to push any extra in there, so they should be enough to keep it sliding on that surface. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back and put it back together. Okay, I've put a light film of grease on everything. Just put some on my finger with a glove and just coated everything lightly. Now we're ready to put it back together. this side that doesn't have the detents, that's the side of the flat washer. Put it on and turn it. Should be very free and slippery. And then we're going to be going in. And we see our stop screw. That's going to go between these two stop screws on this side. So we're going to make sure that when we put it in, it's between these. And I could get my bearing out of the way. We're going in. This washer should go in nice and flush, and we'll worry about that in a second. For now, we're going to go ahead and put our detent bearing into place. I'm going to go ahead and push it into one of the detents. And get our needle nose right there. Slip it over one post. Make sure they're fitting in the grooves. Oh, I can put my cover washer on. We'll just put our cover back on and the two screws. Okay. Doesn't matter when you lock in this. You could have locked it on before you did all this, but that's just the way I did it this time. And make sure it's down as much as it's going to go, and then tighten your lock screw. Just get it snug. Should be turning now freely, not squeaking, and stopping where it should. Okay, now it's just putting the handles back on. This is going to be the reduced angle side, so you can find your reduced angle. Notice how it matches up with the holes. Fit it in and put your knob screw back in, or if you had to use these. Same thing through here. This is your reduced angle view. So make sure you've got the reduced angle view. Notice your holes. Put it right back on. It's ready to be installed on your head. When you have everything put together, the Variator is attached to your binocular mag changer setup. You you're going to have to verify your view, and both the stereo variator and the mag changer have adjusting screws. Now the variator adjustment is just the play between your stops. You've got a little extra, a little extra. This adjustment, when you loosen that, you can turn your adjusting screw so that your play is about the same on each side. If you needed to tweak that, it should be fine by the factory, so that shouldn't be a factor. But now on this side, once you put your variator on, then it may cause your light, your image, to go up or down. And so you're going to have to go back in, taking the cover off the plate, and adjust your view so that your light is centered in your view. It could be down, it could be up, and this adjustment, by loosening the large screw and then adjusting the small adjusting screw, will make your object line up or down, because your variator may change your original position. Now if they're both leaning to one side or the other, then you would have to center it with your centering screw down here, and there's a way to loosen. You would loosen your centering screw and then loosen the cam, and then there's a little notch under here. You can turn it one way or the other. By loosening the lock screw on this side and then unscrewing this and turning your cam one way or the other the way it needs to go, and then tightening it back up, you can adjust your side adjustment, whether it needs to go one way or the other. Now if one eye is not the same as the other eye, one eye is right on, you've got your good eye, but your other eye is off, well, to adjust that, you'd be adjusting on the inside of your binocular head these screws. So those are just some reminders of how to adjust it. They like to have the variator attached from the factory because they can do all these adjustments so that your both eyes are centered right where they're supposed to be. But it can be done. You can either check the centering on the diaphragm 5 and your mag changer on 40, or with your diaphragm at 8 and your mag changer at 25. Those will give you your best views. At 25 with the number 8 diaphragm and 40 power at the number 5 diaphragm. So once you have it all, put everything tightened again. Once you've got it adjusted the way you like it, tighten everything and put your plates back on, your screws and your covers. You can do it. I forgot to mention, if you needed to adjust one eye or the other, when you have to loosen one opposite side to be able to tighten the other one. So if your object needed to go like down and to the right, you would want to tighten it, but everything is tight, so you'd have to loosen the opposite, just like a quarter turn, not even a quarter, just a little bit, so that you can tighten whichever way the eye needs to go. And so determining on which angle, you have to loosen the opposite side just a little bit so that you can tighten the other side, and that moves the lens in that direction. So just remember that you have to loosen the opposite side to adjust the side you really want to do. And if it needed to go down, well, you'd need to loosen both sides and then tighten both sides, whichever they need to go. So you try it carefully, and if you see, I'm doing it the wrong way, well, then just do it the other way. But just be careful, and only do this if you think you can. And here's some information about the stereo variator. I'm not sure if you're able to read the print. Might be too small for you to read, but if you can, if you're able to enlarge it. And then the last thing you need to do is, because the variator adds weight to it, you're going to have to probably release one of your springs if they haven't already been released already. There's 3 extra springs, depending how strong your main spring is. It's the BQs, because there's so much weight, that 18-inch spring, 18 or 19-inch spring, shrinks down a few inches, and it's not as strong. So you might want to replace that main spring to have a nice strong spring. And then even when you do, because of the added weight of the variator, you may have to engage one of your additional springs that they make for this purpose. You have 3 springs, 1, 2, and 3, and when they're not being engaged, they're screwed all the way down. But to engage them, to get a little bit more spring power, you use your screwdriver and go all the way down to find the screw and loosen it, and then it will come up and it will add the amount of spring that you need, so that when you are turning your joystick, you have equal tension going up and down. If you have different amounts of tension, it's not going to be comfortable. So the added springs in the BQ adjust for the added weight of all your attachments. So please do use them, but don't negate changing your main spring also.